Wow, finally, a Netrunner video. About time that I got one, eh? Well, I regrettably still have to inform you that I'm still caught up with real life events, and as such, um, yeah, I won't be posting as often as I once did, but hopefully that will be sorted out in a couple of weeks. For now, I'm just going to keep my channel from cobwebs from growing on my channel, so I'm just gonna push up this quick video here. This is a game that is played in the new patch with Chrome City out. However, as I mentioned in my previous video, I'm not a big fan of most of the Chrome City cards. As such, most of the games you see me here are gonna be with cards from previous packs, and why not anyway? I didn't really have much time to play with most of the recent cards because I was too hooked up on preparing for nationals and regionals. So now that the biggest Netrunner tournament of the year on my calendar is more or less over, I can now settle down to play more Jank. Most of my viewers know me from the Jank that I play rather than my competitive videos, such as my Au revoir Andromeda deck or my Blackmail Noise deck back when there were no easy way to give back pub. Well, before Order and Chaos, I was playing Blackmail with in Noise. That's what people know me for, and I'm kind of going back to that. So here you see me play with a Noise deck that has Comet in it, which is very queer. The reason I'm doing this is because basically click compression. If I can install more viruses on my turn, if I have more clicks, I can install more viruses on my turn, and that means more mills, which means I can win faster, which is always a good thing, especially since I'm against NBN, a pretty fast core. The good news is my opening hand had Clot and Aesop's in it, so I can't complain, along with cash, of course. So I'm definitely keeping it. And with a sure gamble, I'm now looking very healthy in terms of credits. In fact, I can happily install my Comet right now. I'm debating here, do I install the Comet or the Clot? Very tempting to immediately smack the Clot on the table, but I highly doubt he's running Biotic Labor. So I can let him get one turn off without Clot on the table. For now, I'll play Comet. And Comet is actually a little underrated in Noise. I know it's probably not an optimum choice in terms of making a tier 1 deck, because you are giving up Grimoire, which gives you 2 memory and synergizes so well with all your viruses. Yeah, it is actually quite unthinkable to give up your console slot when playing Noise. However, I'm just trying to see if this can get me any further. So basically, it has the same function as Auto Scripter. It generates up to 1 free click every turn, if the conditions are right. What I like about Comet over Auto Scripter is that firstly, it costs 1 less influence a pop, which is pretty significant. Secondly, it does not fail on an unsuccessful run, which is also very important because this deck mostly relies on Data Sucker Parasite to bring down your opponent's ice. And I don't run clone chips, so the only way to get Data Sucker counters and Parasite on the board is to face check ice, like what I'm doing here right now. I'm trying to face check Archives and force him to res the Archives ice. If he does res it, I can then toss my Parasite on it, which I want to. Instead, he lets me through and I see an NAPD contract even after he shuffles with Jackson. This is very important. Obviously, he is baiting me into stealing the NAPD, and of course I won't take the bait, not when he's on 10 credits and I'm only on 6. Very bad idea. So I'll leave the NAPD there. I can always fetch it again later. Well, he finds the next Jackson, and well, that's my dreams gone, but that's fine. So he continues drawing out with his second Jackson. I'm very happy to see the second Jackson, in case you're wondering. This means that because I haven't really installed too many viruses at this point, only 3 viruses. So if I'm able to force out the second Jackson after just 3 virus installs, I'm looking pretty good. It means he has very little protection for the rest of the game. And sure enough, he does shuffle in his NAPD along with 2 other cards. And while I'm not getting any agendas, I'm spending clicks running, but I am accumulating sucker tokens, which is pretty important. Now I'm going to run HQ, and I want him to rest ice so that I can start tossing my parasites down. My hand is pretty clogged up right now, and I would really like to find my parasites. Find some space to install my parasites. So the game hangs here, and I can talk a bit more about the rest of my deck. As you can see, I'm running quite a few events. There are 17 events in this deck, and you want them, as many of them as possible, so you can combo with Comet. mass install is a pretty important event. Comet causes click compression, and mass install further compresses your clicks by allowing you to install so many viruses in half a click, which is amazing. In the meantime, he wipes out all my previous efforts by purging my data sucker counters and removing clock from the game. From the board. But it's okay, I have another clock on my in my hand, so that's fine. In the meantime, I play I Had Worse, and I chain it with a test run. So this is the first time that Comet is actually coming to play. I test run a cache from my heap, which is actually pretty awesome. Test run is very underrated. There is no for a net gain of 1 credit, but the most important thing is that it goes back onto the top of my stack, and I get to mill 1 card. So I run again, and I see an NAPD contract here. Once again, I'm too poor to eat I will suffer a mid-season stray, so I'm not gonna pursue the matter. I'm just gonna leave the NAPD there. The chance of him finding his third Jackson is pretty low. Now, because the clock is off the table, he manages to fast advance a breaking news. In the meantime, I do install my wild site, and the wild site draws me the cache that I test ran earlier. So here I play the cache once again to mill 1 card, but I got a bit too trigger happy with that. I should have used mass install here. I should have mass installed the clot, the data sucker, and the cache. Instead, that was a big mistake I made here. I was too excited about playing that cache that I knew was on the top of my stack that I completely forgot that I had mass install in hand, which is a huge pity because mass install is a pretty important component of this deck. So now here he installs what seems to be an Astro script. I'm pretty sure that's an agenda. There's a reason why he's building such a thick remote. He knows he cannot fast advance agendas, so he needs to score them out the regular way. In the meantime, I do my wild side draw. I was about to pawn my cache, and I realized I just drew into an uninstall. So with uninstall, you don't want your cache to be the heap. You want it to be on the table for you to uninstall and reinstall. So first click, I check his remote to force him to res ice. I really want to play that Parasite, but he reses a Wraparound. Wraparound is not a good target for Parasites at all, so I leave it as it is. Yes, I play uninstall and chain it with my Comet to mass install the cache that I just uninstalled along with the data sucker. I would have mass installed my Parasite as well, but there are no good targets on the board. Wraparound is really a bad target for Parasite because I don't run Corroder. And Eli already has a Parasite that's nearly going to chow down on the Eli anyway, so it doesn't matter. So you see how efficient that can be. In one click, I can uninstall my cache and reinstall it with mass install and another virus at the same go. And I'm still maintaining a pretty healthy credit level thanks to eSource Pawn Shop. So at this point, I find my imp, and I'm going to install the imp and start rampaging on his HQ. Hopefully at this point I can find Scorched Earth if he's running it and purge it from his hand. So he reses a Draco against me, which is pretty good because he doesn't bump his strength, meaning that now I finally have something to Parasite down. And just in time because I have 2 Parasites in my hand. In the meantime, he does initiate a trace of 5 on me, and that's pretty painful. I'm not going to boost the trace, obviously, having no link, and 5 to access 1 card is way too much. So I'm just going to bounce off and clear the tag. Not much I can do about that there. Which was pretty unfortunate because I really want to get that adjusted chronotype going. Losing clicks is a disaster. The whole point of playing Comet is to gain clicks. Wildside makes you lose clicks, which is bad. So far, as you see, Comet isn't really doing that much work just yet. It has only saved me 2 clicks thus far for a cost of 4 credit install and 2 influence. That's pretty expensive. And right now, I'm just caught up with making successful runs because he is forcing me to make runs on his remotes. So I don't really have the time to entertain him. Or rather, entertain building up my rig, which means no time to install that adjusted chronotype. I really want to start running all his servers. And since HQ is open, I cannot afford to not run it. So I ran it, saw an NAPD, and trashed it with imp. Once again, stealing it is a very bad idea. With my because I was busy running, I had no time to install the adjusted chronotype. I really want to get it installed, but there just isn't any time. Now, I really also want to start pawning more stuff, but there's nothing on my board that is really worth pawning. So I chose not to use eSource Pawn Shop. Remember that chronotype costs 3 to install, which is pretty hefty. In the meantime, he does advance an agenda in the remote. So, well, I know I cannot contest it, so I'm just going to focus on my mill game instead. Here I could install Clot, but obviously I'm not going to because I know he will purge virus counters sooner or later. I wanted to have it in my hand. If I install a duplicate copy, it's all going to get purged. That's pretty bad. So yes, this is the third time I think this game that Comet fire off. I sure gamble into a Deja Vu. Deja Vu fetches me Parasite and Cash, which I keep in my hand. Once again, not enough clicks to install all the stuff that I want. As such, I had to trash some cards. In the meantime, he does advance the agenda in this remote server. Turns out it's just a build, nothing much to worry about. Even if it is an Astro script, no big deal again. As long as Cloud's on the table, the train isn't leaving anywhere. But you can be sure that he replaced it with yet another agenda, which I need to steal. But yes, here's where I really wish I had David in my deck. There's no David, I'm not getting that wraparound server. Make no mistake. Not until I find 7 data sucker counters at least, which will take a hell of a long time. And it may as well never happen because he just bears an archer against me and I have no solution to that. So there goes my entire rig. No big deal, as noise, it's fine to lose your rig. It's not like you're depending on any of your programs with your life anyway, because there are always more viruses to draw. But it does make the game a bit harder because I lose my Charizard, which has been making me more money than Comet has been saving clicks. So far, it has only saved 3 clicks. Still not very good. I continue drawing up, and this is a pretty good time to chain once again, uninstall into mass install, saving me my 4th click with Comet. And of course, what better things to mass install than a bunch of caches and that clock. Sweet. I went from 0 credits to 6 in an instant, and I find my daily cast. So throughout this game, I'm hovering on pretty few credits, which is not very good. I know that there are 2 NAPDs in archives right now because I milled one and Imp trash another one. So if I can get to 15 credits, I can play the Hades shard from my hand and steal both NAPDs along with whatever cards I've milled in archives right now, which should be quite a lot because I've been mass installing a bunch of viruses so far. So right now I'm just working my way towards that 15 credit mark, at which point I can play the Hades shard. The alternative, a cheaper alternative would be to play Crypsis, load Crypsis and run through Archer. That works as well, but I'd rather not do that. I'd rather just let the Archer take out by itself and use Crypsis for better stuff. It is still pretty expensive to get through Archer with Crypsis, so I'll try to avoid that line of play unless absolutely necessary. In the meantime, he does place the pressure, scoring another 3-2, placing him at 6 points. Now, I know that he cannot win the next turn because unless the upgrade in the remote server's Cyberdex Virus Suite, he cannot fast advance a breaking news or any agenda for that matter. So I still technically have 2 turns to live. But I really want to secure the game right now because you never know when he finds his last Jackson. Seal the game while you can. So I have 4 clicks right now. After pawning a cash, bringing me to 13 credits, I Deja Vu and uninstall a cache. So again, Comet saves me a couple of clicks here. That's the 5th click it saved me. Then I proceed to double install cache, and that brings me up to exactly 15 credits, and I find 5 agendas in the bin to win the game. Whoa! That escalated quickly, but that's how noise works. At the end of the game, he told me that he was agenda flooded throughout the game. The first few mills I made with my viruses actually been 4 agendas. He was not running mid-seasons, at least I don't think he was. The reason why I saw the NAPD in archives after he shuffled with Jackson was because every single card I milled to that point was an agenda. That was how bad it was. If I had ran it while Jackson wasn't out, I would have gotten a lot of points. He was forced to use 2 Jacksons early on just to shuffle 5 agendas back into stack, which obviously he drew once again. He made the very big mistake of overdrawing with Jackson, which you should never do against noise because it will only accelerate your doom. Unless you're looking for specific pieces that will help you win your game faster, you should not be overdrawing with Jackson because you're just pushing yourself closer to doom and you leave yourself with less opportunity to use Jackson to reshuffle cards back into your stack. Um, yeah, because noise already naturally mills agendas, you do not want to overdraw with Jackson and chunk any agendas in your hand to archives. You want to use your Jackson reshuffles for noise mills, and I think that was his biggest mistake. Otherwise, he just got pretty unlucky, and I wouldn't say Comet. I mean, Comet works, but I'm pretty sure there are better options available. It probably isn't the best use of Full Influence, but it's still pretty fun to try out. I recommend you try it out yourself and perhaps leave some jaws dropping at your local game night tournament. Or yeah, local game night games. Scare some people with that Comet. They won't know what hit them when you mass install a bunch of viruses and start running archives. That's pretty fun. Thanks for watching Happy Net Running. Goodbye, and I hope to see you soon.